Hello there, it's your boy OfficiallyDevin, and we are here with some Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord Abridged commentary. Abridged meaning we're going to be skipping over a lot of the unimportant or uninteresting stuff, and there is going to be a fair bit of that, especially towards the beginning of the game. It has a very slow start. So, what I'll probably do is include enough of that sort of thing for me to complain about it, and then we'll move on to more interesting things as fast as possible. So we start the game by making our character, and I'm basically making a horse lady of the steppe. I've picked the Mongol faction, whatever they're actually called, and I've focused on having a background that makes me good at archery and horse riding. I do remember that in the original Mount & Blade, horse archery was like the worst possible build, so that did tempt me to go for it, just to see how it was and to try something new. You begin the game on this little story quest, like a tutorial quest, where you have to go and rescue your siblings or something from someone, and here is one of the siblings talking to us about doing so, and basically we end up in a tutorial. So this is the training grounds. The training grounds aren't quite like the training grounds in old Mount & Blade, because you can't actually quote-unquote train in them. You can't like gain stats by doing anything. It's really just about learning the controls, which I already knew because they are just the same as old Mount & Blade. So I had some fun with the horse archery, shot some guy into another dimension for a second there, then just unloaded arrows for a while until I eventually realised I wasn't going to gain any bow skill by doing this. Eventually I went in to do the melee fighting, and the melee fighting is actually harder in this game, because you can't disable the thing where you have to block in a certain direction to block, which I always did before because I just found it so much easier. So melee fighting's a bit harder, making it better that I've specialised in bows, I guess, but we'll see how that goes, because you do need to do melee fighting a lot. Once I get bored of beating some guy senseless with a wooden stick, we head on out of that training ground and begin the game. To start with, we are going to be railroaded into this further tutorial quest. We have to go and get some dudes from a village and go and kill some raiders. This, I guess, while not technically part of the open world, is pretty much what the game is. You're getting a taste of it. You go around, you get villagers from villages, put them in your party, and you go and fight nearby dudes until you're strong enough to do everything else that's in the game. And that's the grind I mentioned. You do have to do this for quite a long time. So to start the game, you have to do this 3 times, but the troops it gives you for this tutorial are really good, so basically it's pretty easy. One thing making it more difficult is that while I do start the game with a bow and a horse, pretty handy for specialising in horse archery, the bow is super weak, so you have to absolutely riddle even the lowest quality enemies with arrows to actually kill them. Surprisingly bad, but we're just going to have to work with that. And after these little fights, you get to pick up various things the enemies have dropped, and really this is the cycle I'm going to be going through for a while. You go around killing all of the hostile parties like raiders, looters and bandits, pick up things they drop, and try to collect money. And if you get enough money, you can start to do more interesting things. Basically, you have to fight your way out of being a prole and try to become a landowner or something, so that you can go and do things more at your leisure and not just be a subsistence mercenary type. Anyway, as for the little story at the start, getting rid of all those raiders gives us access to some guy. He mentions some treasure or something and some tips. And the long and short of it is we have to go and fight some more bandits at a nearby Bandit Lair. I discovered a nice sequence break by accident. In this tutorial, your brother is in your party and you can talk to him, and this triggers the end of the tutorial sequence actually, although it doesn't count as being the end. At the end, you kind of become a quote-unquote noble. You become a fake noble of some kind, which allows you access to the rest of the game, but by talking to him, you can do that now instead. So we can make our little banner and pick our faction colour. So I've got some sort of archery based thing going on here. And this pretty much works. You are treated sort of as if you are a noble by all the other nobles, which makes your life a lot easier than the lives of your regular men, of which you're not supposed to be any higher ranking than. Anyway, so we are now the special prole on our way to the bourgeoisie for sure. But first we have to be on our way to this hideout that I mentioned is just beside the training field. The hideout missions you may recall from the original Mount & Blade, and they are kind of the same thing, where you're only allowed to attack with a few troops and you can't attack with a horse and things like that. So I'm on foot with a couple of guys. In this case we're only facing a couple of guys, and we still have our tutorial soldiers on hand, and they just mow everybody down, so I'm just kind of along for the ride in this case. Don't really get much chance to kill guys. We did get a good setup later on in the stage, where I was on top of this giant hill and the enemies had to walk up towards me, so I could snipe down and pick up some experience with the bow. You do need to damage enemies with weapons to get better at using them, and hopefully I'll get better accuracy and better rate of fire or something, and one day get a bow that actually kills enemies too. That would be good. Now towards the end, we have to talk to the bandit leader here. He says something or other about our family being shipped off somewhere else, and that sets up a story quest that you can do, but once you're in the open world you don't really have any obligation to actually do it. We also have the option to duel him, or to fight it out with him and his guys behind him, with also my guys helping out. I decided to not duel because that probably won't go very well given that I'm standing here with a bow and like no armor. And indeed, our dudes just jump in, absolutely own everyone, and the bandit raid mission is done. Once that's sorted, it makes you a noble again because we're back into the right sequence, and then we're out of the tutorial as it says here. So we're in the open world. It takes away the good troops and some of the stuff you had before, so we're kind of back at the official start of the game now, and we need to work out what to do. To start with, I went right back to the hideout, because there's only one guy there and the hideout is still here, so I thought I'll do another hideout attack mission, try and defeat this one guy, and then maybe we'll get some stuff for doing this. Because it is one guy, it kind of starts at the duel phase. We have the option to duel him, and we have to really, but I'm going to have to try and use the melee combat for this. By the grace of the gods, I managed to actually block one of his attacks, then we hit him down, and that's the end of that. As it turns out though, you don't really get anything for doing this. I figured, like in the original, you might get a big pile of food and stuff that's tucked away in the hideout, but it seems you just get the loot carried by whoever was there, and in this case it's just some terrible armor that's worth nothing. So that was a waste of time, but we've learned a lesson, and that's what the beginning of the game is going to be all about. I went and spoke to a nearby army that was walking around. Looks like it's from the Eastern Roman Empire style faction. And what I wanted to do was join them either as a mercenary or just be like a foot soldier, because that was always my favourite part of Mount & Blade. But in retrospect, that actually wasn't in Mount & Blade. That was always a modded feature. I've never played vanilla Mount & Blade Warband, so a lot of the things I always assumed were core to the game were actually added in mods. So you can't just join other people's armies, you have to start your own army. And there was something there where it said you can become a mercenary if you reach a high enough level of clan rank, which I later discovered is linked to your renown level. So because I did want to do that, my focus for this stage of the campaign is going to be trying to get that renown so that I can just go and join a faction and be a mercenary for them. And the hope is that that will lead me to some nice big battles with some nice big loot and plenty of chances to grab more experience for my character. So we need to go grab some dudes from somewhere to die for us as we gain renown. I did stop off at a city to try and do the arena battles thing. I thought maybe I could gain some combat stats by just infinitely beating people up here so that I'm good in combat before we go out into the real world. But as it turns out, unlike in the base game, or probably unlike in the mods I'm used to playing, you can't train up by fighting guys in arenas. You don't gain any stats. You can gain money if you beat up a lot of guys, but the amount you get is extremely small, and how difficult it is to beat up enough people to get money is extremely high. So after trying this for a while, I gave up on life, and that was just not worth it. So I went over to the Mongol bit of the map, the bit on the far right hand side of the world, because I thought I'll get an on-theme party of other Mongol type people. On the way I got attacked by these looters, or I think I attacked them, and I wanted to try out how annoying I could be by using horse archer skirmishing tactics. These looters just can't get to me, so we just ride away a little bit, set up, shoot them down. They are throwing stones at me. They have a ranged attack, so they can gradually take my health off, but it just doesn't do very much damage. And by the way, I am playing on easy difficulty. There are 3 difficulties in the game: very easy, easy, and realistic. So I picked easy because it's the middle one. Whether it's actually easy, I don't know. Some nice fun graphical strangeness going on in the background there, where it only loads the background if I'm not looking at it, something very quantum. And yes, we grab a renown point for taking out those looters. That's basically the deal here. You get 1 or 2 points for taking out a looter party, and a bit of stuff for money, although in this case we can't carry it because your carry capacity is linked to how many people you have in your party, or how many animals you have in your party as well. Getting loads of horses helps. And yes, we need to get to 40 something renown before you're allowed to take on mercenary jobs and go and fight in the big wars that are going on in the background somewhere. So that's what we need to do. We go to the villages, start hiring peasants, and then hope that by going into battles we'll get more money than it costs to upkeep and buy these peasants and rebuy them every time they die. Then we try and get some battles going with the looters. It takes a while to get the fights going. It's actually fast at the beginning here because your party moves quickly when it's small and not carrying very much. But as we go on, it actually got harder and harder to get the enemy to fight me, to the point where it takes many in-game days to catch up with enemies that are moving away from you. You are very slow, which is a little bit annoying, but that's exactly the sort of nice stuff you can cut out in this series. This isn't actually the battle I just started, by the way. This is a slightly more interesting one against some more enemies that happened later on. And I'm just demonstrating my basic plan. I stand behind my wall of peasants, send them in once the enemy get close, and the whole time I'm just sniping away because I wanted to keep training my bow skill. But we can charge in with the sword like that and grab some extra damage. And speaking of training, if the enemy withdraw, you can just quit the battle and win. That's what they're trying to do now. But we can also keep fighting and keep attacking them to train up more. So that's what I was doing. You can see on the left there, I just leveled up my bow and my riding. And if you level up enough skills, your character levels up as well. And that basically lets you pick things to level up faster. So it's all good. And of course we're still grabbing money and stuff as we go along, although I'm kind of waiting to become a mercenary before we really focus on trying to gain cash. Here I am sometime later. We've now got a bigger party of peasants and we've killed a whole bunch of bandits all throughout the Mongolia faction place. The faction begins with a K, and at some point I might remember what they're actually called. Anyway, what I did was go to this town and happen to discover a tournament, so let's take a look at that. That was a great way to gain renown and money in the base game, and I say was in a foreshadowing manner. We begin the first round on horseback in this mass fight where I initially really struggled. I'm not sure why, because I have tons of experience playing Mount and Blade with a spear on horseback, but I think like the timing between the clicks and the attacks is slightly different or something, so I just couldn't get used to it, but eventually I slowly got into my stride. I also can't couch this weapon, so I can't do the thing where you just run into people with the spear held out to kill them. So yes, we gradually get into the swing of things and start thrusting our way through the enemies. There's some sort of coloured teams thing going on, but it's one of the cases where you don't have to be like the last man standing to win. You just need to have got like one kill or something to qualify to get to the next round. So we do that, even though in this round I actually get owned up towards the end. My horse gets hit by an arrow, and then I get lanced. It did actually say when you start the tournament, oh, we're using practice weapons because it's too violent or something, but no, that does not appear to be the case, but whatever. We make it through to the next round, and things start to go a bit better. We lance that guy off a horse, then we lance this guy off a horse, so we've definitely qualified there. We'll get through to the next round. And the next one is a one-on-one between me and another horse guy. I say horse guy, it's an archer on a horse, which is the same thing that I am, but I do also have a whole bunch of riding skill as well. So my horse, even if it's the same one, I think will go faster and turn tighter and things like that. So we just kind of joust at each other for a while, and somehow he gets hit and I don't after we throw our spears at each other at close range. Good stuff. I've made it through to the final all of a sudden. I really didn't expect this to happen. We can have a tiny bit of a wager to make a bit of money off this if we do win. Every time I start a fight, I start with the camera inside of Attilly's face for some reason, so we do try to get out of that as soon as possible, but watch out for that. Now for this fight we don't have a horse, we've got a shield and spear, which is not what we specialise in, but we can still get into a familiar rhythm of combat just from my sheer Mount and Blade playing experience. That being constantly blocking and trying to counterattack exactly as you're done blocking to hit the enemy before they can start blocking. It works most of the time. The enemy's doing it to me as well, so we're kind of just poking at each other, and sometimes the block doesn't work, and we win. On easy difficulty you only take 2/3 damage or something, and it looks like I lost about 2/3 of my health there, so I may have only won that because of the difficulty level. But as you can see, even though we won the tournament, you don't really get anything as it turns out. This was very disappointing. You get basically no renown, and you get a tiny bit of money based on how much you bet on yourself winning, which was only a small amount in this case. But you do also get an item, and the item we got was a bit of armor, and it's better than our starting clothes, pretty much anything would be, so that's good. We have now made some progress despite my disappointment there. I ended up leaving Mongolia and going into the Roman Empire place towards the middle of the map, because I was pursuing some slightly better enemies. You can get parties that aren't looters but are instead bandits or raiders, and these guys actually have weapons, meaning they might drop stuff you can sell, so you make more money fighting these guys. Although, as I said, it's renown I'm really going for right now, and I think you get the same renown for defeating just enemies in general. I think it's just based on what the little balance bar at the top is like at the start of the fight, how much renown you get for winning it. And yes, we kill those raiders easily enough. They do have some weapons, so they might kill my peasant bodyguards, but they probably can't. Next I wandered south to some other place. We'll probably look at the entire world map once it becomes a bit more relevant to our adventure. Right now I'm just kind of wandering around until I can become a mercenary, and then we'll settle down somewhere and get the lay of the land. Anyway, I found a tournament in this place, and I thought I'd show you some of the Roman style tournament gameplay. You tend to get given a sword and shield, which leads to this happening, the slapping match style combat, where both sides just block each other's hits and eventually they go through. One thing I kind of noticed is that if you attack slightly to your left, like towards the enemy's sword hand, sometimes you can hit them while they're blocking, or it's a bit easier to get your sword around their block. So that's what I was trying to do. But for the most part, well, just enjoy the slapping match. This is what it is, and I thought I'd just show this fight in its entirety so you can get a feel for the true glory of the slapping style of combat. We just about win, making it through to the second round, and here's what happened in the second round. If you think this looks a bit like the first round, well, that's just what it's like. At least I can win these if I slap correctly, even without having very good one-handed fighting stats. By blocking and by the shield not breaking, we can eventually win. So I actually fight my way through the tournament doing this to here, and that was the final guy. We slap matched our way all the way to victory. Once again, you barely get anything for winning, so it's kind of a waste of time. You could spend the time just killing 2 easy looter parties to get the same reward. But the boots we get as a prize were better than my starting boots, so that's something. Now in this same town there was a quest to kill some bandits for a bit of money. This was more like it. Although I was a little bit apprehensive because with these bandit fighting quests in regular Mount & Blade, there tended to be this issue where sometimes the bandits would just walk off somewhere and you'd never find them. You'd fail the quest and lose relations with people. So I was a bit worried that was going to happen right here when I couldn't see the bandits as the quest started. Luckily they were nearby, and it seems like the AI is less runny away with quest bandits. They were less willing to just go off to the other side of the map or something. It looks like they're running away from me right now, but I think actually they're just patrolling around, and they did start running back towards me, so even though their parties were way faster than mine, they just walked into me eventually, and we did get the fight going. It was much easier than fighting regular looters. And this fight was kind of interesting because they're all like cav and horse archers, so now we get something a bit different to just standing around shooting guys in their pajamas. These cav provide more of a challenge and more of a moving target for the archery skills. I think you do actually get more experience for shooting hard to hit things like moving targets. The game is keeping track of that in some way, so it's all good. And my horse archery skills will now really come in because we can pursue the enemy and shoot while moving. The shots you fire while moving are super inaccurate, but because we have some skill, they're not terrible even at the start of the game. And big targets like a horse are easy to hit, so we can bring the horses down, and then our guys who are sort of stuck in the middle of the map can bring down the riders. I can also try and use my sword to run at them and hit them, but it's not very effective because my sword also sucks like my bow and I'm not very good at using it, plus it's very short range. Eventually we whittle the enemy down and I finish the battle in style with this little shot. We can do tons of damage against that marauder by shooting at him while he's running at us, because the damage is somewhat based on the relative speed of the two things. Some nice physics in action there. So yes, we get the one-shot kill and take away the victory, and like with those sea raiders earlier, fighting steppe bandits gives you better stuff. Their prisoners are worth more when you ransom them in towns, and they drop things like weapons and horses and even food, which is particularly useful because there is a whole food system in this game where you have to feed your party. I'll probably talk more about that in the future because it became more relevant after a while. Now, I went back towards the Mongol place, Kuzait, that's what it's actually called, or Kuzait perhaps, and I picked up a quest to go and raid a hideout. The problem was the hideout was quite heavily garrisoned, so I was worried about doing this. I tried to chase some of the nearby bandits instead, because that's the upside of leaving the hideout. It spawns decent bandit parties for us to attack. I don't think I actually managed to catch any, and I eventually went in to attack the hideout anyway. The issue we have is that, like in that old Mount and Blade, you can't take many party members for hideout battles. You have to take like 5 guys, even if it's filled with like 40 enemies, you just have to deal with that. And on my first attempt there, it went very badly because I got hit by an arrow and died right at the start of the fight. But we can go back to it because unlike in old Mount and Blade, the hideouts don't disappear if you fail to take them, so we can try it again. In the meantime, I did manage to get a fight with some of the nearby interesting bandits. I quite like fighting the guys who are on horses because they tend to trot up and stand in front of you, so while I'm sitting on my horse behind the line, you get some good shots against them. There we saw how ineffective a sword attack was, only 16 damage for that nice riding slash. So yes, because the hideout's still here, I thought, well, I'll try and do the quest again before it just times out and we fail. One issue we have is that because I'm like a bow-focused character, kind of leading an assault on foot's difficult, because if the enemy is shooting at me, I can't raise a shield or something to not get hit by the arrows, and I have to stop to shoot back, making me an easy target. So not very nice. At least my party is here to help me raid forwards and take out these guys, and once we get close the archers will stop trying to shoot you, and I'm going to have to grapple with the Mount and Blade combat system without the no directional block thing. I'm really quite bad in melee combat, so I'm very worried. I tend to just attack as much as possible and try to stun lock them as my main strategy. We then go inside this cave system, and things got easier from here because you had to take out a bunch of enemies who were just standing around. And by shooting at them from a distance, we can deal some damage while they're kind of stuck on things and trying to work out how to get to us. Plus, as they gradually jog towards us, we can take them down pretty easily. That is one of the massive surprises I had when I played the game. You still can't run. The fastest you can move is kind of a light jog, which makes it very easy to shoot enemies as they run towards you, but for the most part it's really annoying. It makes getting around on foot especially quite hard. In this cave system we had to work our way through it, and we eventually took out all the enemies inside. This leads to another of these little showdown situations with the last few enemies off somewhere. They actually aren't on the map until now. You can see the balance bar at the top kind of sprung back into action. This was a shame because I knew my guys wouldn't be able to take on their guys since my guys are really wounded and I've only got a few left. So I tried to win the duel with a cheeky headshot to the face with the bow. This didn't work, as you can see. It only did a bit of damage because the enemy's wearing a helmet or something. And even if you shoot them like in the face through their helmet, I'm guessing it still counts as going through the armor. So it was fine. That guy survived and we failed that mission. But all that aside, we're moving on now because I eventually did pick up enough renown to reach clan rank 1, whatever that is, meaning people like me enough to hire me as a mercenary. So I went and spoke to one of the officers of the Khuzaits and joined up as a mercenary. So basically, they'll give me an absolutely pitiful amount of money every time I win a battle for them. So that includes things like taking out the bandits and mercenaries, or going on to fight in the big wars. And fighting in the big wars, while actually much less profitable by that metric, is what I wanted to do because I was after both some action and things like high level loot dropped by quality enemy soldiers. To help us out with that, we can make use of the improved army system. This is something that's definitely an improvement upon the previous game. In the past there were these armies, but you had to follow them in a more piecemeal fashion by just going after the lead party's party. But now you can join the army as like an entity. It functions more like one big party. So you can just kind of join up and then sit back and see where the army takes you, and you'll just fight in its battles. As for where the army takes me, well, very quickly it takes me right into a fight. We are fighting the purple guys, the Romans or something, and we get a fight where we have the advantage, so that's nice. Now in these fights with the army, you get a very interesting feature. You get the ability to lead a small section of the army personally. So I can take 16 cav and be in charge of this section. Here I am inside my own face, that's that thing I was talking about earlier, also inside my own hat at the top or something like that. Anyway, once we're out of that, we can get back to leading the cav, and the leader of the army overall gives you orders, suggestions really, about where you should go with the cav. So he's right now saying protect the right, he had said protect the left, so I had to run across the face of the line to bring the cav to the other side. And the enemy are somewhere off to the left. About halfway there, he orders me to charge instead. I didn't think that was a very good idea. Then he orders me to protect the right flank. So basically, the AI's orders are kind of insane and random, but I like the idea. Then he orders me to charge, and this looks more like it because the enemy's main blob has just engaged. So we race in with all of our lance cav and get to work. I'm going to draw my sword and start hacking in as well, but my sword kind of sucks too hard to really do anything, and I suck too hard as a player as well. But I can swing impudently and enjoy the chaos all around me. The enemy's morale starts to break and enemies are running away. Now we can pick up some free kills and experience. And because we're on easy, all of our allies take 1/3 less damage, meaning in a fight with like equal blobs, our blob should come out on top. Soon enough, everything's routing and this battle is pretty much over. And that's the end of that. I finally got to see some larger battle action, the stuff I was going for, and the stuff I'd expected to get right away by joining an army as a foot soldier or something, which I really do think should be a core mechanic of the game. As I said, I kind of assumed it was, but no, it is not. But now we are there. It only took a few hours, but we've got to the point in the game when I can participate in these big fights without them being my own fights, like in my own kingdom in the very late game. And you do get better drops, and some of the stuff dropped by enemy soldiers will be better than the stuff we're equipped with, so we can use our campaign with the army to make our character a bit stronger. Now after a while we progress on with the army, and we find an even more interesting fight. We plow into a bunch of enemies where this time we don't have a big advantage, and it's a bigger battle, twice the size. Once again I'm in charge of a detachment of cav, and the general is telling me to be in reserve, so I was about to charge out and skirmish with them, but no, I'm going to now sneak back and sit behind the main blob of allied troops. I'm not sure actually listening to what the general says is a good idea, because you can almost certainly think of something better to do yourself, but I enjoyed the chance to do what it said and just kind of see how that progressed. I did have a feeling we probably shouldn't stay in reserve, like behind the line, because at some point he'll just suddenly order us to charge and we won't be in position to do so. So here that's why I'm kind of sneaking up on the enemy flank, even though he's there saying go in reserve, and I'm like, no, I'd rather be here ready to charge when you inevitably start just saying charge, and there it is, the chance to charge. I was a bit confused with the controls. It's kind of hard to control your little section because it uses the number keys and the F keys, and you also have to use that finger to move your character as well. But anyway, we charge in to this big blobby fight and get started. And this, to me, is where the game absolutely shines, when you have these chaotic melees, and in particular ones where you're just in command of a small amount of the troops, because that allows you to focus on fighting personally as well, so you get a bit of that side of the gameplay, and a bit of ordering your own troops around to try and influence the fight. You don't need to worry about micromanaging the whole army all over the place and standing still to do that specifically. We can fight, and we can go around with our little squad trying to help out our allies. And it looks like things are going well. The enemy are breaking up, and here's me switching gameplay styles. I decided to quit the fight and rally all the cav together just outside of it to make a little line and then go back in for a charge. The enemy are doing the same thing, but we're behind them. That's going to be a devastating attack. Looks like the main blob fight is petering out over here as well as our troops win out. Not just on having superior numbers, thanks to our high quality raiding of course, but due to the fact that we're on easy difficulty and our blob's just better. The blob's probably half dead, but still technically alive. So yes, now we just clear up the scraps and enjoy the fight really. This is what I was looking for from this game, this kind of chaotic battle action that you really can't get anywhere else, and the combination of both commanding troops and fighting personally in the battle. And for some reason in this battle, I think because I picked up a better sword or something, I was doing really well hacking down enemies from horseback. My sword's now a bit longer and sharper or something, it does more damage. So yes, the battle comes to an end. It's a big win for our side presumably, although we don't really care about the side in general. We're just a mercenary here for the fun and here to get good loot and money. Plus to level up our character of course, so we can be better at doing this when it matters more later in the game. The question is, can we get enough money doing this to kind of make progress in the game? Because we could just do this forever. This could be the entire game. But unless you can get enough money to start building up a personal army, then you can't really access any of the game's mechanics around building kingdoms or becoming a noble with land and things like that and fighting for the factions properly, not just as a mercenary. So, really, the renown battle is over. We're well known enough to do stuff in the game now. We just need absolutely loads of money. So why don't you join me for part 2 as I continue my campaigns with the various armies as a mercenary, fighting lots of interesting battles, including some cool sieges coming up, in that quest for sweet, sweet mercenary coins, so that we can one day become so rich and powerful that we don't need these kingdoms anymore, and can one day take over the world. I guess that's the game objective. All that won't be in part 2, but we'll begin that long journey next time, and I'll find some more things to complain about as well, so look forward to that.